came down to the Cubs and Red Sox. Cubs get him for 6 years, $155 million guaranteed. Now, Lester, one of the biggest names on the free agent market, and in the wake of his move to Chicago, the lefty sent out a couple of tweets. First, he said, extremely difficult decision for me and my family, but we love the outcome and couldn't be more excited to join the Cubs. He followed that up with a message to Red Sox Nation, saying, I understand the disappointment. Boston will always have a big place in my heart, and we will always consider the y'all family. Getting the y'all maybe because he lives in Atlanta in the offseason. Anyway, he goes to Chicago. Kenny, a 73-win team last season. Does one guy like Jon Lester sort of change the perspective for a team to suddenly next year, that was non-competitive last year, to say, we might be able to grab a wild card here?
Yeah, Bob, I think he's the final, for now, the final piece of what has been a very impressive offseason for the Cubs. They signed Jason Hamill, solid starter for them last year. Funny, they traded Hamill and then brought him back like the Red Sox tried to do with Lester. Then they get the catcher Montero from Arizona. They have these position-playing prospects who are coming up, Chris Bryant and Baez, and they are ready to blossom, I think.
You know what? It's tough to go from 73 wins to, say, 87 or 88 and get that wild card that you referred to. But Kenny's right. You look at the moves that they have made, and Lester, to me, it's not just about what the guy gives them on the field. This is a guy for all those young players that the Cubs have to look at and to say, I'm going to model myself after this guy, a professional, a hard worker, a guy who goes out there, fastball cutter. He's developed the curveball. Look at his stats last year. For him to put up the numbers that he did in the American League, averaging a strikeout an inning, an ERA under 2.5, now he's going to the National League, where he gets to face lineups with pitchers. I don't think that the Cubs are going to be a postseason team in 2015, but 2016 and after, I think you start talking about that.
And Lester always pitched well within the American League in the division, the American League East, and now he's pitching in the National League. That's got to help him, too.
Look, he's got ace stuff. He's obviously tested in the playoffs and postseason. He knows how to pitch in a big market. He's good for 200 innings every year. He's done that 6 out of the last 7 years. I mean, he is legit, and Kenny's right, Jack's right. He's going to raise the level of everybody around him. So will Joe Madden. That's the other thing I wanted to bring up. We're not just talking about Jon Lester. The Cubs went out and spent $25 million on a new manager because they think they're ready to go for it. Maybe not next year, but I wouldn't rule it out entirely. This is a team that has completely remade itself and is sending a message to its fans. We are going for it. We're going to spend whatever it takes, including the manager and including our ace. This is a team that's going to be fun to watch next year.
They've got a lot of young talent, too, as we know, amongst the guys beyond just the guys that are at the major league level, like a Starling Castro. There's Baez, there's Bryant. And when you think about that, everybody thought, Kenny, they'd come here and trade a lot of those guys to get some other pieces. I mean, if they're going for it, they might just hang on to those guys and make them not available.
Yeah, it's interesting. They made it clear to the clubs at the outset of this offseason, we're really not looking to trade those guys. You have Castro at second, you can play Bryant at third, Baez at second. Obviously, if the right deal comes along, they'll pop one of those guys, but they're certainly not inclined to trade any of them.
You know, we were talking, Jack, about the fact that can they make a jump? Let's say they get to the 85 win level from 73. That's not unrealistic. Baseball perspective has changed with that second wild card, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Look at what happened last year. You look at what the Royals were able to do, what the Giants were able to do, and they might be able to make that leap. We've talked about some of those young players. You mentioned Rizzo, and we're talking about the Cubs and giving them all this love. Let's not forget that the most active or one of the more successful teams this offseason has also been the Chicago White Sox. So Chicago has been the hotbed of baseball activity, and I like the moves that both of these teams have made.
I agree, Jack. I think the Cubs are capable of getting themselves into the mid-80s and wins. I mean, it's hard to go from 73 to 90 plus. But I'd feel a lot better. I'd feel a lot better in my prediction if they went out and got one more bat. Somebody for the middle of their lineup. Right now, they're a pretty good team. They're an interesting team. But for me to say they are bound for the postseason, they need one more bat. They need to score a few more runs.
Is this a sign, Kenny, you think they might go out and pay for a bat? They spend that money on Lester. You know, they've got a lot of young guys under contract, so that they might be willing to spend a little more to get that.
You know, Bob, I think they've already elevated the payroll a lot this winter.
Yeah.
It was in Mets territory. It was low.
Yeah.
I think they're probably done with their major spending for now because a lot of their, as we said, a lot of their top position players the top prospects are position players, and I think they think these bats are very high-end bats.